Welcome to Amazing Last Days once again. Today, as usual, I'm going to do something a little different again. It wasn't that long ago, maybe a few months ago, a lady texted me or replied, made a comment on one of my videos, and she said, she said, you leave these messages for your grandbaby, messages for Bella. She says, why don't you just do that all the time and tell her all your good stories of your life? Not going to be around forever. And something she can go to YouTube channel and hear some stories about her grandpa, things that happened in his life, what made him who he was. And so I've decided that's a good idea, and I'll just share it with everybody, record them on YouTube, and one day she'll be curious about me again, and she'll remember how much I loved her and how much she loved me. Maybe she won't be so busy, and she'll take a minute to reflect on Papa. And so you all get to hear the stories if you like, and some of them are pretty interesting. I know I'm still not over most of them. So here's my storytelling for today. Okay, so back when I was about either 29 or 30, I believe I was 29 still. Matter of fact, it was. It was fall of the year. I had to have been 29. I lived in northeast Georgia in a place very near Dahlonega, Georgia. Gold mine in town, used to be, now it's a college town. And they still do a little gold panning out there, and that's, I suppose, why I lived there in that area, because I loved to go gold panning. Would never have had the gold fever to the point that I was willing to sell the farm and try for it, but bought a gold pan and a little sluice box and had a lot of fun picking little pieces of gold out. And it's about the only hobby that I know of that you can make $20, $30, $40 in a day, sometimes a little more than that. You find a little nugget or two. And so it's how I dated my ex-wife, as I took her gold panning. Not every date, but some of them. And I guess I'm a cheapskate, but we'd get bologna sandwiches and bananas and some kind of Coca-Colas and just tie them off and put them in the river, the Cokes, and keeps them cold, keeps them ice cold. And I'd get out and just work all day, and I'd hand my new wife, the gold pan, and she sure liked picking those little flakes of gold out and putting them in the little bottle. We eventually panned up enough to make her a little necklace out of, put in a container of sorts, a bevel, whatever you want to call it, and hang it on a chain. And she kept that for the longest time. I have no idea where that thing went to. But anyway, it's a neat little place, and it's beautiful, and it's right in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains, the Appalachian Mountains. So it was a unusual place, and there's a lot of folklore, a lot of odd things that have happened there. And I just thought I'd share something that happened to me that is absolutely unbelievable, as a lot of my life has been. I've had people literally call me a liar. Matter of fact, on my last video. And I've had people tell me to my face that it's just not possible that I could have done those things or experienced those things, because they never had, I suppose. But I really did, and I really have, and I'll never lie to you. I have no reason to. And got some extraordinary experiences, and I'm going to share this one. So I don't know what year it was. It was back in the late 80s. I'm going to say 88. Yeah, it was. 1988, fall of 1988. And I was working at a shop making boat docks. I was the company welder, as usual. Many places I've been, I was the only welder. And so we were really slow. It was a slow time of year, and plus business wasn't that good anymore there anyway. And I was probably putting in anywhere from 20 hours, 18 hours a week to maybe 30 some odd hours on some weeks. We really had to work and scratch to get the work, and I just couldn't get out of that rut. I couldn't get enough money ahead to even catch up my rent, my electricity, and pay a phone bill, much less, have gas for a couple of weeks while I started a new job somewhere that had some hours and paid something. So I kept clinging to that as my lifeline, that job, for some time. And I wound up meeting a fellow named Hoyt Robinson in Dahlonega, Georgia. And I understood, people told me that he was quite wealthy. And I know it to be true, but didn't care. I liked the man. I admired him in a lot of ways. In a few ways I didn't, but I liked him pretty good. And he treated me pretty good most of the time, and I appreciated him. So I let him know that I had I was bachelor. I liked one of the girls that worked for him. And so he tried to make things possible for me to get to know her better, and we could be nearer to each other, and who knows what would happen. And I guess he wanted to be the matchmaker, him and his wife. So Hoyt had renovated, I guess would be the way to say it, renovated a upstairs apartment out of his barn. They had a dairy farm at one time, and the creek that ran near it where they got the water was just full of little gold particles. It was a really good little spot. And so he owned, I think it was 1,500 acres on one side of the highway that came through that area. It was out in the middle of nowhere, but still highway. And Highway 400 ended on one side of that highway. So you either went straight and back up into the hills and went to the copper mines and up in the mountains, or you could take a left and go to Dahlonega. And so he owned a lot more property. I believe it was 4,000 acres on the other side of the road. So he was doing pretty good. They said he had more money than the bank. That's doing pretty good. Literally had more money than the bank had. All the money in the bank was his money, something like that. But he was a pretty nice guy. He was a little, he liked his money. I don't think there's a word for it. Man's got that kind of money and a tree falls on his property and he makes sure that he cuts that tree up. And goes through all the trouble. There's not a lot of money there in comparison. And he would take that tree and go sit out on the side of the road with his chopped up tree and sell the wood so that he'd get the money out of that. Well, he was certainly thrifty, wasn't he? So, anyway, so getting on with my story, Hoyt renovated an upstairs apartment and let the girl that worked for him, and I will not say her name, she moved into that upstairs apartment. And then when he found out that I liked her, he had a carpenter come over and build an apartment in the dead center of his barn. There was a little side door there next to the road, kind of, and huge, enormously thick barn door. And he had him go in and build me a little narrow but long apartment. And at the end of it was a shower, a toilet, space for a cabinet, a sink, and a bed. And out my back door was a enormous barn area that had been cemented. The floor had been cemented, and it still had troughs where the cows used to eat. It's an unusual place. It was nice enough, you know, if you didn't think about where you were, that you were in an old barn. It didn't look bad. It was pretty nice and cheap. And even though it was cheap, I couldn't afford to make my payments. I got behind on my rent, I got behind on my electricity, and they cut it off. Couldn't afford to keep my phone on, and I could barely afford gas and food. I had to have the gas to be able to continue on and get some kind of go into work and get something going, and I had to have food. And other than that, that's about all I had while I lived there. It was tight. I had been through a divorce and wasn't over it, but had not been together for a couple of years, and wasn't over it by a long shot. But you know, when you're young, you need somebody, whether you realize it or not. And so I was looking. And so when Hoyt made me the little apartment on the side of the barn, I actually met somebody else that I liked a whole lot more. I met her. She worked at it was a old courthouse, I think. And they had turned it into a museum. And she worked there. She was some type of governmental employee. And I thought she was about the prettiest girl I ever saw in my life. And if you could just kind of daydream and dream up what you wanted and hand that over to God and say, you know, this is what I'd like. She pretty much had what I liked. She had long brown hair. She was kind of tall and slender, which the height didn't matter, but she was slender, and she just very feminine, and she wore a dress to work, and I go up there and visit the place that she worked and see her, and a nice white blouse and a light greenish type skirt, I guess you'd say. And I just found her extraordinarily attractive, and I was head over heels before we ever even went out. And so I realized that she kind of liked me too. And we wound up going out on a date. And so we had seen each other for a little while. And I didn't know, I didn't know she was still married. She was separated and had been for a bit. And she sprung it on me after I really was starting to care about her. And I was trying to sort my way through that. And one evening, she decided to come over and we had pizza. We would take turns getting pizza for each other. And that was kind of a nice thing. And I was really just getting head over heels for her. She was, one of my memories is, we were outside. It was late in the day. The sun wasn't setting, but it was behind the mountains, the high hills and mountains. And so it was getting a little cooler, and the shadows of the hills were over everything. So it looked like it was almost nighttime. It wasn't. It's still a while, but when you're in the mountains, you know what I'm talking about. It gets dark a little early. Even though there's still light, the shadows make it kind of like it's next to nighttime. And we were outside. There was a cool fall breeze. As a matter of fact, I remember the leaves were just starting to change color. And my favorite time of the year, I think, for a while anyway. The leaves were changing color. There was this crisp, cool breeze blowing, and the leaves and the trees were swaying, and they were yellow and reddish colors, and kind of almost a purple color in some of the leaves. And she was standing there with her, it was, don't know what to call the top, but it was kind of tight, and her nice skirt that she wore. And I just, at that point in my life, don't think I had ever seen such a sight. And I really, my heart was thumping for that girl. I don't even know if I ever told her all that, but anyway, she decided she was going to come bring a pizza, and she came over to my place, and she told me, she said, well, something about she had told her ex, who wasn't her ex, had told him that she'd be, apparently they were living next to each other. He was living across the street from her. And she had told him that she'd be back there about 11. For some reason, she still checked in with him. And so there I was, sitting on my bed with her and eating pizza. I didn't have a table and chairs. All I had was a bed. That's another story, which actually I'll tell it after this. But we were sitting there eating pizza, and we were talking and laughing and having a good time, enjoying each other's company. And I was really, really feeling strong. I had strong feelings for her. It just seemed like I had known her for 1,000 years. It's the strangest thing. I don't believe I've ever reacted to somebody the way I did to her before or since. I've had relationships, but not where it was just immediate, like I knew her for the longest time. So anyway, it was odd, but my heart was really thumping for her. It was really a strong feeling that I was super attracted to her in many ways, and so came time for her to go home. I suppose it was about 11 o'clock. And so we got up. I think she still had some pizza in the box there, and she took the rest of it with her. And we walked to her little, she drove a Volkswagen Rabbit. Wasn't a Rabbit either, a Volkswagen. It was the old Volkswagen. And a Bug is what they call it, a Volkswagen Bug. And it was missing, I think, a tail light, if not a headlight also. But that's what she drove around. And so we're outside, and I'm barefoot. Now, it's a real snaky place. Copperheads everywhere, rattlesnakes some, water moccasins all over the place. And I'm walking barefoot in the dark. There was some gravel out there and a lot of little thorny weeds, and I just walked right out there barefoot, didn't care. Walked her to the edge of her car, and I told her, I says, you know what? I says, I'm falling for you. And I gave her a kiss goodnight. And I said, I'm going to stand right here and watch you drive away till you get around the curve, and then I am no longer responsible. Whatever I can protect you from, I'm right here. And so I kissed her goodnight. She got in her car, and she drove off in the night. And I watched that one tail light go around the curve, go around the hillside, down the roads. And I just kind of floated in La La Land, and was easing my way back into the apartment. And what I forgot to tell you is we ate by candlelight because I could not afford to pay my electric bill. They cut my electricity off. So I went back in and I stood there in front of my little cabinet that I had. And I was careful not to look at the candle because it ruins your night vision. And it's pitch black like a cave back in that apartment anyway. When there's no lights on, it is extremely dark. There's no place for light to come in. It could be a full moon outside and lights outside, and you won't see it inside. It's just really dark. And so I kind of turned my head away from the candle, and I leaned on the shelf that the candle was on, and I gave myself a minute, daydreaming. And then I just kind of closed my eyes and turned and blew the candle out. Slowly opened my eyes so that I wouldn't catch a glimpse of any light, and I could get used to the darkness quicker. Well, it was a pretty simple room, like an efficiency, and I found my way over to the bed. The sink was right next to the bed, actually. And so I laid down on the bed, flopped back on the bed, and I'm laying there, and my eyes are closed for a minute so that I could adjust to the darkness. And it's something that a buddy of mine had taught me. He took me caving. Don't know the other term for that. Seems like it's spelunking or something. But anyway, we had went exploring caves up in Virginia or Tennessee somewhere. And he taught me, when you first go in the cave, take about a minute and just lay down in the cave, lay down, and close your eyes and let your eyes adjust, because there is actually some light that kind of bounces around in there. It's really dark, but your eyes can pick up some of the reflection of some of that light until you just get way back in there. So anyway, I'm laying there in the bed and I'm daydreaming. I'm not sleepy at all. I'm just in love. And I'm laying there thinking about, almost said her name. And after about a minute, I'd say 60 seconds, I slowly opened my eyes, and to my horror, there was something standing over me. Now, this is where it gets hard to believe. I saw whatever it was extremely dark in the room. And whatever that was, and I think I know what it was, but whatever it was ever so slightly lighter than the darkness. And, this was 37 years ago. And I still can't find a better way to describe that. It's like it was a silhouette. There was I didn't see eyes or a mouth or anything. I didn't see any detail. I saw it looked like a cookie cutter silhouette, shape of a gray, I'll just say it, had been cut out of the darkness. And it moved. And it was ever so slightly lighter. Almost like a hole in the darkness. But it had two arms, two very long, skinny arms. And it was tall. I have to guess, I'd say 6'1". Don't know. It had a really big pear-shaped head, upside-down pear. And the longest, skinniest neck, its neck was about as skinny as my forearm. And, actually, my wrist, about like that. Pretty skinny. And it had a long neck, very long neck, longer by probably 3 times longer than my neck, maybe more. It was shocking. And there was literally a shocking, it felt like electricity went through me. The sudden realization, and I probably released adrenaline or something to make me feel like that. I don't think it did it, but it was standing over me, and I was in shock. I was in horror, and it felt like electricity zipping through my brain and my body. And there again, like I said, I don't think it was doing something to me. I think it was from the realization that I'm actually really seeing this. Now, I'm the kind of person that always wished that there were aliens and that there was such a thing and that I get to see them. But I had learned enough at that point to realize that's not what those are. If they're real, that's not what it is, because I do believe what the Bible says. And so I suddenly am seeing this thing, and it's standing with its back arched and its shoulders back in a very odd stance. And it leaned over very slowly, and its face just got closer and closer to mine until it was about right here. Never felt breath, and I don't remember that sound change. Like if you take your hand and you go by your ear, sound bounces around a little different. You can tell something just past your ear. If you're near a wall in a dark room and you can't see anything, you'll hear something different. You don't hear a sound, it's just a different way something affects your ears, and you'll sense that you're near something. There's a different pitch of that ringing in your ears or something like that. And so I never remembered that, but it was there. I could see it. And it ever so slightly luminesced. And when it got about this close to my face, I didn't know if it was going to kiss me, bite me, if it was just trying to look at me. I didn't know. But I screamed like a 9-year-old girl. The high, shrill pitch of a 9-year-old Girl Scout. And man, I swung around, let out a yelp, and kicked. And missed it because it was gone. By the time I had pivoted, I'd never heard it make a sound. I kicked the sink and the clock that was on the edge of the sink, broke my alarm clock. It was actually a radio clock. And I broke that thing to smithereens. I broke the sink and hurt my foot really bad. And I jumped up, didn't see it anywhere, didn't know where it went to, didn't hear a sound, and ran almost through the door. Like I said before, it was a heavy barn type door, and I hit that door so hard, I don't remember turning the doorknob. I certainly didn't stop to do that. And I slammed that door open. I don't think it even slowed me down. I really don't. I slammed that door open. I weighed about 203 pounds at the time. That was my constant weight. I was bench pressing 400 pounds, 4 sets of 10, 400 pounds. And I could do 21 behind the neck chin-ups. I had 21-inch biceps and could do 300-pound curls on the machine. I could do 100 pounds in each hand flyweights, laying on my back. So I was pretty stout. I had taken martial arts since I was a teenager, and wasn't too many people I was afraid of. I might be shy about some things, but I wasn't afraid. And that scared me so bad. Oh boy, was I afraid. And I ran through those briars, the short briars, and and gravel, barefoot, and till I hit highway. I ran all the way across a kind of parking lot there for the barn, and didn't stop till I got in the middle of the road, and I turned around and looked back to see if that thing was coming after me, and didn't see a thing. Didn't see any evidence of anybody, no cars, no nothing. Boy, did I want somebody to be around. And I stood there and watched that door to see if it was ever going to come out, and I never saw anything come out of there. So the only other way in or out was that back door. And so I stood there, I'm guessing for maybe more than an hour, not 2 hours. It's probably well after midnight, and I start realizing there's nobody gonna come down this road. Because if they were gonna, I would have stopped them or got run over, because I wasn't intending on going back in there. Well, I'm horribly afraid of snakes. They give me the heebie-jeebies. And so I'm standing barefoot on a paved road in the middle of nowhere in the mountainous area. And I'm waiting for a car, and the car's not coming. And there's a gray, I don't know what color it was, but that's the description, the shape of a gray. Large head, long skinny neck, tall skinny body, long skinny arms, big head, upside down pair. And that's what I had just seen in there. And it was real. And like I said, I screamed like a girl. I was terribly afraid, because there was this just shocking realization that that thing was real and it wasn't human. And those things really do exist, because I just saw one. And I stood there thinking about it, and I said, what am I going to do? I'm out here by myself. And Mr. Tough Guy, I don't know what that thing's capable of. And so I didn't want to see it no more. I saw it plenty. And I stood there in the road and nobody's coming. And I said, well, if I walk out of here, one thing's for sure is I will get snake bit. The copperheads come out of the woods and out of the weeds and bushes and stuff around, and they lay on the pavement, because the pavement holds heat from the sunshine during the day, and it stays warm during the night. And so fall of the year, it's kind of cool. They're not yet hibernating. It's not that cool. And like I said, they come out at night and get something to eat, and then they lay on the pavement where it's warm. And so without a flashlight, no, you're going to step on one and you're going to get copperhead bitten and you're going to die. And so I said, well, I can't do that. I've taken a chance just, walking through those briary bushes and running through there and getting to the highway. So I said, well, I don't have any choice. I've got to go back. Don't know where the matches were. Have no idea. But all I had was a candle. Didn't have a flashlight. Didn't have nothing. Didn't have a cell phone like you do now. So I waited as long as I could. And I said, well, I'm getting sleepy. I was still scared. But hope it's not there, because I've got to go back. I've got to. I can't stand here all night. So I slowly walked my way back through all those little briar bushes, and I was tougher than nails. My feet were like leather anyway, so I made my way back in through that front door, and I stood there for the longest time, and I watched and I waited. Didn't see anything, didn't hear anything, and I felt my way over to the bed, and I crawled in that bed. And believe it or not, I went to sleep pretty quick. I wasn't awake in a long time. I'm tired. But the bottom line is, I really did see whatever that was, and I'll tell you what I think it was. I believe what the Bible says, and I believe that there are angels and fallen angels. And I know enough about physics to know that Alpha Centauri is, I think, a little over 2,000 light years away. A light year is how long it takes light to travel in a year. And that's 365 days, light traveling at 186,000 miles per second. Are you serious? There is nobody coming from Alpha or Beta Centauri, our closest stars, to our star. 2,000 years at the speed of light. Now, I suppose there probably is somewhere a technology that allows people to travel instantaneously from point A to point B, no matter the distance. But it's not, well, I guess in the true definition of the word, they are aliens. They're not from here, but they're God's creation. And they're just not coming here. We're quarantined. We're the planet that fell to sin. So this is a pretty bizarre story. When you mix it with true reality, the reality of the Bible and our Creator, it just really adds a little extra. It's hard to understand, I suppose. But it's clear to me that ghosts aren't real and aliens aren't real. Well, they are real, they're just not what they appear to be. They're fallen angels. And they're up to something. The Bible says so. And so this particular fallen angel did not know that I was smart enough to figure that out. And I went by the Bible instead of what everybody's saying. And there again, you know, God's made all kinds of different angels. If you look in Ezekiel and I believe Revelation and several other books in the Bible, you'll see where there were angels that were almost mechanical. One was a wheel, and it was covered eyes, eyeballs, and I believe I don't remember how it propelled, how it moved, but it floated, it flew. And I don't think it had wings or propellers, and it was alive. It had eyes all over it. And there was another one, let's see. I can't remember all of them, and some of them look like a man. And so either they can transform, or that's just the way God made them. I believe that's just the way God made them. Most of the time, apparently. Well, the Bible says that Lucifer can transform into an angel of light. So whatever he looks like most of the time, he can transform himself to be quite beautiful, and he glows in the dark. Don't think that was Lucifer. I think it was a lesser fallen angel. And it may very well have looked the way God created it. And he knows why he created something that looks like that. I don't. It wasn't very attractive. And it scared the Beetlejuice out of me. It really, I did. Like I said, I screamed like a 9-year-old girl. And I was about as effective as one, too. I mean, I was mortified. And so I went back in and laid down and went to sleep. Obviously, I survived that. But that's what I saw. And while I'm telling the story, the girl that I had originally liked, that had an apartment upstairs at the end of the barn, knew that I didn't have a mattress. I had a frame, and I didn't have a mattress. And so she offered, she said, well, I've got a mattress in the real barn, and the barn that's out in the pasture. Now, that was a hay barn. And upstairs, they had stored some things. And I said, well, what about snakes? And she said, well, shouldn't be any snakes. Check it out, you know. If you want to borrow the mattress, you can. And I went up there and looked, and it had a pretty good mattress, but it had a little hole, a little tear spot. in the bottom of the mattress, like that corner had been rubbed off, moving it or something, and an opening in the cloth that opened up. Well, there's some springs, and then there's a lot of cotton and stuff. And so I went ahead and took a chance. I shook it around, didn't see no snakes around or anything. So I took that mattress and carried it by myself down out of the barn and put it in my little apartment in the middle of the barn. I had slept on that mattress in that apartment probably, I would say, at least a week. And I started hearing a little scraping noise. You could tell it was scraping against the springs in the bed. And then right where my head was, I had a pillow, but my back bothered me all the time, so I would take the pillow and move it off to one side and just lay with my side of my head there on the mattress. And you could hear all that going on in the mattress, and I'm thinking, oh, there must be some mice in there, got in there somehow. And I'm sleepy, and I can live with it. And then I noticed a few times I'd move a little bit and I'd feel a thump underneath my head. I'd thump right there where my head was. On the inside of the mattress, it would thump. And I just didn't figure out what it was until I woke up one morning and threw my little sheet back and started to get up, started to put my feet on the floor. And I looked down, and there was a medium size, actually more on the small size, but it wasn't half grown, but it was big enough to bite you. It was a copperhead. And it was directly underneath that hole in my mattress. I think he had just crawled out. And so I saw him, and I, of course, didn't scream like a 9-year-old, but I was pretty uncomfortable. I get the creeps. I don't like snakes at all. And so I jumped up to grab a broom or whatever I could, and it took off and went underneath. There was probably a crack under the door about that high, big enough for any varmint in the world to get through there that wanted to. And I had never thought of that. But he got out of there and he was gone. So I had been sleeping on a mattress that had a copperhead living inside the mattress. So there's two scary stories for the price of one. And that was when I was 29 years old. So life was troublesome and things were not working out so good. And I never did get any more hours there at the shop. And I took a job. I don't know how I even survived to get to payday, but I did. I made it till payday. I owed everybody in the world. I was so far behind. I knew I'd never, ever get caught up. And I hate owing people terribly. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to run for it. I'm going to go out west. And I took off. I drew one paycheck on payday, went out and got my paycheck. Actually, it might have been the second one. But I picked up that check and I headed west. And I probably hit I-10 somewhere and made it all the way to the center of the country. And stayed there for a little while where my sons were living in Oklahoma. Tried to find work and there was none. Absolutely zero work. To make a long story short. And I said, well, now what am I going to do? So I sold the car, and I got $450 for a $1,500 vehicle, probably $2,000 vehicle. It was a good little car. I sold it, and I got a bus ticket to Seattle, Washington. And I had seen an ad about fishing boat jobs, and I said, well, I'll try that. They say you can make $3,500 a month, and you don't have to pay rent, you don't have to buy food, you don't have to do your laundry or anything. You just work 12 hours a day, 15 hours a day, whatever it is. And you do that and save your money. And I said, I'm going to go try that. That was a lot more money than I was used to making. The most money I had ever made, now this was back in the late 80s, but the most money I remember ever making was $400 take home in 1 week. So I was about ready to go, at least not have financial problems. And I went all the way to Seattle, tooled around for a while, put in for a whole bunch of different fishing boat jobs. Got one with a company called, I believe it was Icicle Seafoods. And actually it wasn't, it was a different company. And I can't remember the name of it, but I went out on a ship. It was a 300-foot vessel, big boat. And it was the Heather Sea. And they flew me up to Dutch Harbor, Alaska. It took us a week to get up there. The weather was so bad, we got stranded in Anchorage for several days. And the company, of course, gave us a pretty good sizable food allotment, which you could actually buy beer with that. And back in those days, I would still have a beer or two. And I enjoyed that tremendously. And then we went out to Dutch Harbor, and it was like landing on Mars to me. It was mountains straight up out of the ocean. The roads were right next to the water, cut out of the side of the mountain. And it looked like you could just slide right off in the ocean. And those drivers, oh my God, they drove fast. So you get to Dutch Harbor, Alaska, and they've got these four-wheel drive taxis. They're vans that are four-wheel drive. And they loaded us up when we landed there. And the landing was horrific. It was, people were screaming, didn't think we were going to make it. And then we landed safely and slammed the brakes on an iced over runway. Ocean on one side of the runway, ocean on the other. And so everybody applauded. We lived. We got off. We got in the four-wheel drive taxis and went out to the boat. At the end of, I can't remember the name of the road, but it's all mountainous. The snow was about 10 feet deep. It was unbelievable. The beauty, but it was so barren and so dark and mysterious and otherworldly looking. And there's a sound effect when you've got snowflakes as big as your fist. There's a cush to the sound. Everything just sounds funny. Sound is different when there's a lot of snow. And so it was just an odd feeling being there. And then we went over to the boat and immediately got out and went to work. And we worked 15-hour days, 16-hour days every day. So that was what took me to Alaska. And just to finish this episode about the young lady that I was so much in love with, before I left, she said to me, I need a little space. It's the wrong thing to say to me. I had heard people say that to other people, and it always meant it was the beginning of the end. Need you to back off a little bit now, and if you would see later that they'd push them a little further back until they would break up. But that it always started with, I need some space. I need some of my own space. Well, she had said that to me because she was very busy, and I was falling in love with her. I really loved her. And but the word was falling, not chose to. I mean, I was head over heels. And I was probably grasping for her. I was really, really head over heels. And so she was telling me that she just needed a little minute, and she kind of needed to finalize things and then move on. And she wasn't telling me she didn't want to see me. She wasn't telling me that at all, but that's what I thought. And so I was in Alaska for some time. I was making a mint. I instantly started making tons of money. My first paycheck, now remember I said my last paycheck was, my biggest paycheck was $400 ever. And I was 29 years old. Well, I turned 30. After I got there, I turned 30 years old. And my first paycheck in Alaska was, I believe, $2,400 take home. Took out a lot on taxes. So that was a big jump. And when they handed me the check and I saw the numbers, I didn't know how much it was going to be. But I had put in a lot of overtime. But I just started laughing and I said, I can't believe you just paid me that much money. And I knew I was going to prosper. So it wasn't long after that I called this young lady up. And she said, where in the hell did you go? And I said, well, I went to Alaska. I moved up here to Alaska. Alaska, she says. Why? She says, why did you go so far? She says, I said, well, you told me you needed some space, so I gave you a lot of space. She said, I didn't mean it that way. She said, I didn't mean like that. I just wanted to slow down a little bit. And I said, well, it's done now. And so we wound up not. I saw her probably twice more in my life. And she's been married twice more in her life. And I was single for the longest time. I stayed single till just 2 years ago. Not even 2 whole years ago. I was single for 30 some odd years. And here I am in the Philippines now. I found myself walking down the road today. I went to the hardware store. This is my candy store, my toy store. And I've been really in a lot of pain from this injury that I've got. And so I needed to get up and get around. I walked down to the hardware store just to buy 4 nuts and bolts and washers so I could finish making my project. And I looked up and I said, what have I gotten myself into now? And I've said that so many times in my life, literally around the world, I will occasionally look up and go, what have I gotten into now? But you know what? One thing I can say, I got the best life. I'm hurting for a lot of different reasons, emotionally and physically. One thing I'm not hurting about is having a bad wife. I don't. I've got a good wife. And it's one thing I cannot complain about. So it took me 60-something years, but I finally found a good wife. And I guess for today, that's going to be my story. And message to Bella, number 14, I think, maybe 15. And to be continued. I'll probably give one of my life stories, 1 or 2, about every 3 or 4 days until I run out, and that's going to be a while. So until next time, this is Amazing Last Days with Michael Evans. By the way, I think I'm going to change the name of Amazing Last Days of Michael Evans because I'm getting pretty old. So we'll see. I may change the title just a little bit. And until next time, see you later. There's lots of more good stories to come, so stay tuned and please like and subscribe to Amazing Last Days of Michael Evans.